Hi, my name is Natalie from the Combat Anti-Semitism movement. Thank you for tuning into our program. I want to start off by saying that this program was recorded before the war broke out between the IRGC and Israel, and thankfully, all of our speakers are safe. Though this program doesn't touch on the subject of the war itself, it touches on a very important subject of the lack of human rights under the IRGC in Iran. I'm very excited for you to hear from all of our speakers, so let's get started.
Hello everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for this incredibly important conversation. My name is Natalie Sanadaji, and I'm going to be your moderator for the event. As the world celebrates Pride Month, we're taking this moment to put a spotlight on a region where the LGBTQ community identity is not just marginalized, but it's criminalized. In the Islamic Republic of Iran, being queer can mean imprisonment, torture, or even execution. And yet, despite this brutal repression, brave Iranian activists continue to raise awareness not only against the regime, but proudly and openly as members of the LGBTQ community. Today's conversation brings together a group of remarkable individuals, and I truly mean that from the bottom of my heart. All of you are amazing, and each with a powerful story and a courageous voice. And together we'll explore what it means to be queer, to be pro human rights, to be anti the regime in a world where that often demands silence or conformity. We're going to go into questions such as what it's like to be LGBTQ individuals under the Islamic Republic of Iran and its proxies, which some of you might more know like about firsthand, and some of you might just be able to share your insights. Um, we're also going to go into why is there silence or even justification from parts of the global LGBTQ community, and what does it feel like to be queer, pro-Israel, and anti-regime, and to be pushed out of the LGBTQ spaces for it. And how is anti-Israel rhetoric been used by oppressive regimes to distract from their own inhumane kind of abuse of people? Um, we're going to start off today's event with Amira. Our first speaker, Amira, an Iranian American artist and activist whose work centers around themes of identity, displacement, and the lived experiences of Iranian women and marginalized communities. Through her art, Amira has created powerful visuals, narratives, and has really confronted the injustice and invited a dialogue really through your art, Amira. And I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to be here today and for being a voice for so many of the voiceless.
Thank you for your introduction. I'm very happy that I'm with you. Um, if I want to answer to your question directly, it's very hard to live in a world that you suffer gender apartheid regime inside Iran and left Iran when I was only 17 and came to a country like Canada and see people ignore uh, all of your experiences because they believe an anti imperialist narrative. So when you suffer a pain, it's painful. But when you suffer from ignoring the pain, it's more painful. And unfortunately, we see that inside LGBTQ community and even in my university gender studies department, that they are shamefully ignore all of our experiences that we experience under the Islamist regime in all the Middle East, and they discredit all progressive country like Israel, U.S., and give credit to Islamists for being LGBTQ friendly. And it's funny because if we see the Middle East situation, for LGBTQ community, we see everywhere that Islamic regime influence. We see lots of violation against gays, lesbian, and even transgender people. So it's much more painful to live in a country that people ignore it. People see in your eyes and ignoring what you experience in Iran, and people are still experience it in Iran.
And what has been your experience when you've tried to confront these people, people who seem to have no stake in what's happening, people who have never been to these parts of the country that they seem to stand so proudly for? What kind of reaction have you gotten?
I try to explain for them what we experience. I try to uh, give a real picture of Iran to them. But, uh, even in my study place, when people don't want to see what's the reality, they don't. They ignore. And it makes me angry. It really hurts my mental health and everything. But I always speak up. I feel that we should explain. We should say maybe one people, two people can have sympathy, and they put their ideologies, their ideologies behind, and hear you without the lens. And I try to explain. It's the only things that I can do. But for myself, I don't give up. It's very important to don't fear of your experience, and the knowledge of history, the knowledge of sociology of Middle East. uh, it's so important. You feel that, okay, I know lots of things, and I have to say that even many people are against me. It's so important in this time, especially we see lots of anti-Semitism. We see lots of sympathy with Islamic regime. It's very important to don't give up for me and explain, and explain.
And do you feel like ever since the war has started between Hamas and Israel, that your stance on the war and on Israel itself has kind of isolated you from the queer
Yes,
community?
yes, yes. Unfortunately, I removed from one of my classes that the topic it was about the Middle Eastern Revolution and women's rights. Just because I told my teacher, you cannot support Intifada because Intifada is two series of attacks against the civilians, and I removed many places, even inside Iranian community. I mean, the people introduce themselves as progressive, but still I see some allies. I see more people, especially in Iranian community, that they don't brainwash. They understand what's happening in Israel and Gaza, and I, I suffered when I see babies killed in Gaza, but uh, I know the Palestinian ideology. I mean, pan-Arabism, Marxism, Islamism is the cause that the babies killed. Hamas, Hezbollah is the cause that they killed. So I'm not the baby killer. The baby killer is the people that they think that if give birth to more child, uh, to more child to uh, kill themselves for Islam is a good idea to go to go to heaven. So you know, it's hard that time to stand for reality, and and stand against lots of manipulation. You heard many times they labeled me as child killer, but it doesn't important for me because we experienced um, the mass kills of Jewish people in Middle East, entire Middle East, Farhud, Iran, Tunisia. We experienced it in Europe, and that time it's very normal for people to ignore that. And because I know history, it's not important for myself to representing myself as a good human. It's important for me to be good human. So yeah, this is this is the reason that I don't give up, because the experience the history that we see in or our era, so we cannot ignore that. And I don't want to be one of the people, for example, in Nazi regime, that they don't try to help the people who are really suffered from the hate and genocide. So I try to stand by the truths that I believe, that I learned, and this is my knowledge.
I think it's, truly amazing that after everything you've went through, you still kept your voice. To come from a place where you're kind of being silenced for who you are, and then to leave that place and to think like, okay, like now I can be who I am and I can be open about who I am and feel free, and then to face people who not only didn't go through what you went through, but almost tried to tell you that you didn't go through it, or try to erase that, or try to sympathize with a regime that tried to silence you. I can imagine it's very hard to still keep your voice and to keep speaking out. And I think it's really commemorable and amazing that you're able to do that and you're so strong. And truly, I'm
Thank you.
so honored to know you and to have you here today. So thank you so much, Amira, for sharing with us and for sharing your story and for sharing your voice, not just here, but constantly online and in rallies. And next, I would like to go to our next speaker, who is a speaker who's been on multiple events and someone that I've known for a while now, Matthew Nuriel, who is a queer Iranian Jew activist and educator. And many know him by his stage name, the Empress Mizrahi. And he currently serves as the director of the community engagement of Jimena, where he works to uplift the voices of Mizrahi and Sephardi Jews. Matthew, I think you're incredible. I think everyone here thinks you're incredible. And I would love to hear a little bit from you about, what it's like being from both of these worlds and kind of maybe the backlash you've received by being, who you are,
Thank
everything that
you.
you encompass as a Jew and as Iranian and as a queer, just what it's like to be from every single one of those communities and how they maybe go against each other.
Yeah, thank you. Well, firstly, thank you for the lovely introduction. And I want to name that I'm in awe of everybody else who's on this call. So thank you. Um, it's been a very interesting ride journey in my life. It's far from over. But it's, I started out, uh, just to name off the bat, I wasn't born in Iran. My parents are from Iran. I was born in the UK, grew up in the 80s and 90s, and I grew up in a time where there really wasn't in the broader world, there wasn't much of an example of what it is to be LGBTQ plus, much less in the Jewish and the Iranian Jewish world. So I grew up with a lot of homophobia, and to me, the source of that homophobia was the Jewish world and the Iranian world. So I found myself pulling away from both those parts of my identity for a good number of years. And what I learned through that process basically was that you can't, I felt being queer, being gay was something that was immutable. Like you can't change that about yourself, which is, of course, we all know is absolutely 100% true. I didn't think that about being Iranian or being Jewish. I viewed being Jewish as just a religion. I viewed being Iranian as just a nationality. And as I grew older, I realized that that's not the case. It's just as immutable as being gay. Like, you can't change any one part of who you are. Like, it just doesn't work. And once I came to that conclusion, I was like, okay, well, what are you going to do about this? So you're going to keep running away from those parts of who you are? Because in running away from those parts of who I am, I'm running away from those communities. And I'm actually doing a disservice to those communities by not being present, because we have to be present across the board. Otherwise, how are people going to know who we are, and how are people going to accept us? So I decided, okay, I'm going to show up, and I'm going to show up fully, chest up, and this is who I am. And I'm here, I'm Jewish, I'm Iranian, I'm part of these communities, I'm part of these worlds, and you're gonna, we're gonna have to deal with each other. Like, we're gonna have to talk. And I feel like these communities have definitely come a long way, certainly in Los Angeles, where I live. And I do want to name that I think that young people in Iran are incredibly, like, Gen Z in Iran is incredibly advanced in terms of their acceptance of Jewish people, LGBT people, and just their understanding of the world is so rooted in reality. Anyway, I digress. So that's how I started to get into the work that I was doing. And then I think something that I've been paying attention to for the past number of years that really exploded after October 7th was the anti-Semitism that's coming from the left. And, people like to label it as directly an LGBTQ plus issue. I don't look at it that way. I think that LGBTQ plus communities are traditionally aligned with the left because it's the left who gave us our rights. It's the left who gave us equality. We had to fight for those things, and the people that were fighting for those things were on the left. It certainly wasn't coming from the right. So I think what's unfortunate is this tribal mentality that comes along with your political affiliations. So I think a lot of people in the LGBTQ plus community feel aligned with the left because they did them right. And so it's just this tribalism that I think doesn't work for us anymore. And it really doesn't work for anybody, because the minute you start to look away from the truth and look into a dogmatic set of beliefs of what you're supposed to believe in and what you're supposed to follow, there's no integrity left in what you're doing. Right now, you're just following along like cyborgs. Like, it's just pointless. So now, this community that taught me how to be authentic, taught me how to stand up for myself, taught me how to be proud, naming the LGBTQ plus community, I now have to use the same tactics that they taught me within their own spaces, because this ideology of queers for Palestine has sort of permeated a lot of LGBTQ plus spaces. And I think what's permeated those spaces even more than that, and I think that what these loud anti-Zionist voices, what their jobs are, and I don't even think they realize this is what they're used for, but this is what their job is. It's not to get other people to jump on board with them, because most people won't. Because most people look at them and think they're freaking crazy, and that's scary, and I don't want anything to do with that. But what they are doing is implanting enough of a seed of doubt in people's heads that they feel scared to speak up, because what if they say the wrong thing, and what if they are right? And I think that's a big problem within the LGBT community when it comes to this issue and within the Western world in general. But for the sake of this conversation, the LGBTQ community, because I will say this, and then I'll stop speaking. I feel like I'm rambling. But people always talk about the Queers for Palestine and the hypocrisy of it, yada, yada, yada. What people don't realize is whenever I post something about any of these issues, I will get people from an older generation of the queer community who will DM me and thank me, or even sometimes in the comments. And they're thanking me because they know what it is to live through fighting for a real issue that was life or death for them. Okay, we're talking about people that fought we talk about that it's illegal in Iran. Well, it wasn't that long ago that it was illegal right here in the US. I mean, they weren't hanging us, but they were imprisoning us, right? Arresting us. So there are people who recognize that and remember that, and who can look at movements like the Islamic Republic regime or Hamas or all these Islamist groups and go, wait a minute, these people hate us. These people want to kill us. They want to see us dead. So there are people that recognize that, but I think because of what we discussed before in terms of silencing people and the fear to speak up, I think it's scarier for people to speak up out loud. So yeah.
I I can only imagine, what it's like having to take what that community taught you and then using it almost in a sense kind of against them. But
Yeah.
it kind of makes me think about the fact that a lot of the people I want to ask you if you feel that people who are part of the queer community, either in Europe or the United States, who have a Middle Eastern background, who have a stake in this, who maybe have family that are still being persecuted for who they are. Do you feel that they have a better understanding, or do you feel that they're also brainwashed by the community that they grew up in, by the fact that they're in the United States or in Europe?
I think it really depends. And again, this speaks to a broader issue beyond just the LGBT community. I
Yeah, of
think
course.
what I noticed just from my own lived experience has been Iranians that have lived in Iran for a substantial amount of time or who have lived under the regime uh, into adulthood or perhaps into their teens or early adulthood, whatever. They have a much more uh, well-rounded and rooted in reality grip of what is going on, as opposed to people who were maybe born here or moved here when they're people like myself who moved here when they were very young or were born here and who want to fit in a sense. And I think that there's a lot to be said for the trendification of activism and the trendification specifically of this movement. I think people want to believe in something. I think people want to be on the right side of history. And I think people, it's almost like have an unconscious need to be part of something that's bigger than themselves. The problem with this is that it's the wrong side of history. Like it's the wrong side of the movement, especially for LGBT people. But yeah, I think it really depends on the individual. And I mean, listen, I've come across people online who are Gen Z, anyone, who are very anti-Semitic and who do believe in the regime. My experience has been the majority of them are not that, but it's everywhere. I mean, what can you do?
And obviously you're right, we can't generalize because there are different types of people everywhere. But if we talk about the majority, I would say that the majority of people who have a stake in this, who have suffered under the hands of either the Islamic regime or a different regime, do have a better understanding of these concepts. And it kind of brings me back to the idea that Israel is literally the only place in the Middle East where you can be openly gay, and they have the biggest pride parade, and you would think that maybe that would open people's eyes to the idea that this is a very diverse country and that there's people of all religions living here, that they all have equal rights. But then it goes into pink washing, and they
Yeah.
kind of even turn that into something negative.
So, I mean, it's just like what Amira said. Like, people are not going to listen to what they don't want to listen to. People are going to ignore whatever it is that goes against what they've been taught to believe. And I think that it's easy for those of us, like all of us on this call right now, work in the sphere of activism on some degree or another, right? So, to be an activist, you kind of have to go against the grain and speak up for what's the truth. And I don't think the average person wants to do that, maybe. I don't know. I think the pink washing thing is really interesting. I think it's kind of absurd and it's a like, okay, what if it is pink washing? It doesn't change the fact that gay people have rights in Israel that they don't have in other parts of the Middle East and North Africa. And I think that it's such an absurd like if you actually really cared about LGBTQ plus rights, why is this the hill that you're going to die on? That, oh, they're pink washing. Okay, what about the people that are being hung from cranes in Iran? What about the people that are being stoned to death in Yemen? What about the people that are being beheaded in Palestinian territories in honor killings? Like, what about all of these places? You don't want to talk about that? Because what? It's Islamophobic? Like, what are we really fighting for here? Are we fighting for gay rights or are we fighting for optics? And to me, this whole argument of pink washing is bullshit. I'm sorry, excuse my French, but it's all about optics. It's like kind of the perfect embodiment of performative activism is to spout off about pink washing. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't mean anything. Queer people in Israel are going to be out there still living their best lives, whether you think they're pink washing or not. And I just think it's also one of those things that's absurd because I can sit here and list you all these facts about what's happening to LGBTQ plus people across the Middle East and North Africa, and your only response is, oh, you're pink washing? What is that? It doesn't mean anything.
It is unfortunate that people will kind of go out of their way to just hate on Israel or be anti-Semitic. And even I think it was just this week that in Syria they tried to have a pride parade, and I think at least one person ended up dead. I don't quote me on the numbers, but yes, the fact that they're willing to care more about the idea of being anti-Israel than they do about the fact that gay people have rights here. It is a question of like what are you fighting for at this point? And Amira raised her hand. I think she wants to add
I want to
something.
add something. Yes, Israel now is the only place that we have pride parade in Middle East. But in the past, 5 years ago, we have pride parade in Beirut. We have pride parade in Soleimani, Iraq, Kurdistan region in Iraq. But because of the influence of Islamic regime there, they don't have any more parade there, and even Hezbollah, when Islamic regime has more influence in Hezbollah in Lebanon, they can't even tolerate uh, a simple banner for LGBTQ community, but in the past they have. In Kurdistan region, now they have good connection with Islamic regime. In the past, they have good connection with the US and Israel. Now they criminalize LGBTQ people in Iraq, in Kurdistan. So if you see how Islamic regime, Qatar and Turkey influence on homophobia, you can't give the credit of uh, being progressive to them. Just I want to add that, and I hope very soon we have pride parade all over the Middle East, and in Iran, people wearing rainbow dresses. They wearing David Star necklaces to show their beliefs and to protest against the regime. And they are over, and I'm sure very soon we have Pride Parade all over the Middle East, and we can travel safely to Israel, to Iran, everywhere.
God willing.
Inshallah. Amen. Um, I I pray that we get to see that in our lifetime. I think we can all agree that we feel that it is coming because, I think we all know that sometimes it has to get worse before it gets better. And I really hope that we do get to see that in our lifetime. And on that note, I want to say thank you again to Matthew for speaking out and for being with us here today. And I want to move on to our next guest, Michael Valdez, a Cuban Iranian American and a content creator, LGBTQ activist, and founder of Hot Jewish Energy. He's also the host of Hot Jewish Podcast and a co-author of Hot Jewish Hanukkah. Michael brings a bold and unapologetic lens to the identity of faith and activism, and we're honored to have you with us here today, especially because you're actually very close to me right now, also in Israel. And also, I'm not sure, are you in the bomb shelter right now? Are you in a safe space? Or did you not run?
I went down my staircase and I came back to the apartment. We're all good. Uh, very thankful to be here. Thank you for having me. I can very wholeheartedly say that I have never felt more proud to be a queer person than I have in Israel. And it's embraced here, it's celebrated, it's so I mean, it's become normalized in the States, but you feel a greater sense of community here because Judaism is in the air, Jewish values are in the air, and anyone who identifies with Jewish value or supports Jewish values is here. And it's a very beautiful feeling to be here and have all of that mixed together and have all parts of your identity just coinciding and just being here right in front of you. It's very, very cool.
I just want to say, just wait until 2 weekends from now when you experience. I think this is going to be your first
Absolutely.
Pride in Tel Aviv. Oh, it's
I am
insane. And
so
Pride always falls on the weekend of my birthday or the weekend after my birthday. So I just celebrate my birthday as part of Pride. It's amazing.
as
You're
you
in for a
should.
very big surprise. And I want to ask you a little bit about how you started Hot Jewish Energy, how you kind of got, because you Hot Jewish Energy really embodies like the queer movement and the Jewish movement together as one. And I kind of want to get into how you started that, what kind of, I guess maybe either backlash or praise you've received from both the queer community and the Jewish community.
Okay. So long story short, I I've been online for a bit. I've been online publicly talking about my opinions and my values since May of 2021. So it's been over 4 years now, and it came from a place of me kind of having a moment with my having like a little I I don't want to say crisis because crisis is a very serious word. I was having a tough time grasping my Jewish identity, what it meant to me, why I was still observing things, why was I still doing what I was doing. I'd gone to modern Orthodox yeshiva for a decade, and I grew up in a Jewish house, conservative house, and I I didn't really I knew Israel existed. I'd been to Israel. I have family here who came from Iran after the revolution. I My grandfather's buried here, and it never really dawned on me about the conflict. I guess I was too young to understand it. But then May of 2021 came around and a re-escalation of the Israel-Palestine conflict came. And I felt like at that point, I started seeing how bad things were getting. And anti-Semitism was getting worse in the States. I had been in my little Jewish bubble until I was 18, Jewish people mostly surrounding me, most of my friends being Jewish. That kind of broke when I went into college, but in college, I never experienced any anti-Semitism, thankfully, but because I was still in New York, and New York is the biggest Jewish place in the United States and one of the biggest Jewish places in the world. So I I was just trying to grasp, why are we being thrown, American Jews and Jews outside of Israel, why are we being thrown into a conflict that we have no direct involvement with? And that was me being a little naive, because then you realize it's all rooted in anti-Semitism and that it's uncovering a bigger issue that we're having in our society that's been boiling under the surface. So I put up a poll asking people how they were feeling, and it was one response that I got. Someone said, I'm afraid to say that I'm Jewish in a room full of people because I don't know how people will react." And I made a video kind of just being very raw, getting emotional about what was going on because it was just very hard to understand for me. And overnight, hundreds of comments, very negative, fully seeing what this Free Palestine movement is truly about, and that it's really just not about actually helping innocent Palestinian people. Most of these people don't care, and you can see that they don't care. And since then, it's been about speaking my mind. really seeing who resonates with what I'm talking about, seeing where I can grow, what room I have to grow. And in regards to backlash that I've gotten, the hot Jewish energy branding that I've created, it didn't really start until later on. It was really just, it's really just been me. It's very connected to me. It's very much an extension of me. I I don't really like labeling it as this is a place for this people, and this people. I'm really just putting myself out there, and I kind of like putting it in a way of that whoever gravitates toward who I am, what I'm about, and what I love talking about, this is for you. I kind of keep it very broad because it can really be anyone. You don't have to be queer to like my content. You don't have to be Jewish to like my content. You don't have to be like the biggest pro-Israel Zionist person ever to like my content. You can be in the middle and want to learn about things and be willing to listen. And I I guess most backlash that I have gotten is that I sometimes get myself into trouble. I'm a little bit raunchy sometimes. I'm a little bit not safe for the workplace. And a lot of people have told me that I am giving Judaism really bad rep. I've had people tell me that. And I I take that, I listen. Some people say it in a very nasty way, some people say it in a very constructive way, and I just kind of take what I can from it. I take it with a grain of salt because there are also a lot of people who enjoy what I put out and find meaning in it. Even some of like the most unserious things that I post, I at the end of the day, my hope is just for people to laugh if they need to laugh, or for people to get the information that they need to receive, or for things to get better in a way, if they can, whatever I can do to make things better. And I know the internet can only do so much, but sometimes it can change minds, sometimes it can make change. And that's what I hope I'm doing, at least.
I definitely think you're doing an amazing job at that. First of all, I want to tell you, never let anyone tell you what kind of Jew you should be, what kind of impression you're giving people of the Jewish community. I've had people come up to me and ask me, why were you at the Nova Festival on Shabbat and a Jewish holiday? And I said, well, because I'm a traditional Jew, I'm a spiritual Jew, and this person said to me that doesn't exist. It's either you're Jewish or you're not. And I looked at them and I started crying. I was like, who are you? Are you God? Who are you to tell me how to express my Judaism? So first of all, never let anyone tell you that. I think a lot of us would agree that you're doing an amazing job. And there's so much seriousness out there, and there's so much information being shoved down people's throats. And when it's so intense, sometimes it's not palatable. It's hard for them to kind of understand it or to even want to get into it. And you kind of feed it to people in a funny, lighthearted way. And I think you're doing a great job at that. So thank you. Thank you, Michael, for all that you're doing for the community. And I kind of have one final question for you of when you have like these difficult conversations, let's say with people in the queer community and trying to, and maybe when they, let's say it's people who followed you before you became Hot Jewish Energy, and they saw you more so as Michael than a Jewish activist or a queer activist, and then suddenly maybe they see you in Israel, and they ask you like, how can you be there? Like, what are you doing there? And you explain to them the truth that it's an amazing place to be gay. What kind of responses do you get? Do you feel like people just don't want to hear you out, or do you feel like you've had breakthroughs with people one on one, like let's say in DM messages? Do you see those breakthroughs happening? Do you see us going towards a more positive place?
I guess my response to that would be I've had my page long enough that people know what I stand for and where I've been and where I do travel to. So if anyone has an issue with me being in Israel, they have not looked at my page long enough. or they have not really looked into who I am and what I believe in. But I don't know if I'd say breakthrough as much as just shared empathy. I mean, I have a former coworker that they're Jordanian Palestinian, and October 7th was really tough because we were coming from two different sides of the aisle, and they had lived in Jordan. They had family in Gaza that they didn't even know about that got killed. They have family in the West Bank, and bottom line, it was a very tough time. We were very friendly at work. We're even closer now because of the discussion that we had about it. It didn't even need to be a big discussion, because I think my coworker understood that I was going through a very tough time in October. I hadn't really talked to them for a while because I saw some stuff that they were posting and it made me very upset, and I let them know that it made me very upset. And they started saying some things that were very untrue and propaganda-ish from their side, and I said that's not true. And at the end of the day, they came over to me. They noticed that I was kind of not being receptive of them, and I didn't really want to talk with them. And they said, we're both going through a very difficult time. It's a very serious situation happening. And all I can say is that I know your heart. I know you're a good person. And we both want the same thing at the end of the day, which is peace. I don't want Israel wiped off the map. You don't want Gaza or West Bank wiped off the map. We're here, we're living, we're choosing to have a relationship with each other, with however that may be. And it was just a very warm moment that I think very few people have, because there's not that level of empathy. And I think it's even made me more of an empathetic person. I am an empathetic person to begin with, but having that moment, I was like, you know what? Can't lose your humanity no matter what. You gotta hear people out, and they know I'm in Israel now. I've told them when I've been in Israel multiple times. I sent them pictures from Yafo on Ramadan. I said, hey, look at all these decorations. It's beautiful. And it's I think it opened up the relationship more. I think we're able to talk about things and just be honest with each other and not have to like tiptoe around things. And I just hope that more people have that experience, that can be more conversations like that. It doesn't have to be deep. It can just be a level of, I feel for you, and for each other. We feel for each other, and that's that.
I think that's truly beautiful that you were able to have that moment. And I can honestly say that I've had some moments myself where I felt that I was able to connect with someone from the other side of the aisle. And I think sometimes it's actually easier to connect with someone from the other side of the aisle, like I said before, who has a stake in this, than it is with someone who's never been here, who has no family anywhere in the region, who really doesn't know any part of the history of the region and of this war in general. So it's almost like less surprising to me that you were able to have that moment and that connection with someone from the other side rather than someone who's like completely separated from this as a whole. But I think that's amazing. That's beautiful. I'm happy that you were able to have that moment. And with that, I would like to introduce our next speaker, Omid. Um, Omid, thank you so much for being here with us today. And you are a New York-based LGBTQ rights advocate and advisor on Iranian human rights at the United Against Nuclear Iran, UANI. You moved from Iran to the United States in 2007 and have since dedicated yourself to advocacy and working to bring visibility to the plight of the queer Iranians under the Islamic regime, which is a very heavy and hard job to do. And it's truly it's been an honor to speak to you and to get to know you. And I'm really so honored and thankful that you're here with us today to speak. So the floor is yours, Omid.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I'm actually honored to be here. I'm glad to have known Michael, Amira, and Matthew. I've known for years, and you, of course. I'm so glad to be here.
Thank you so much for coming to share, I guess, with the listeners something that's not necessarily easy to share, because you have a deep history with the community and working to fight for the community. And I know that in recent years you've received more, I guess, backlash than previous years. And I guess we want to hear a little bit about maybe what it was like in Iran, what it was like coming here at first, and how you kind of found yourself within the communities here in the United States.
Well, in Iran, I'm going to say this because this is related to what I am and all of us are experiencing here, especially as people with Iranian background. In Iran, of course, we have a legal system that criminalizes being a part of LGBTQ member. Article 234 of Islamic legal penal code, for example, talks in details about how and based on what gay men should be executed. And it is still being used. I mean, that law is still there and is still being executed. So it is not something that we can just dismiss. So there is that system. So there is no system of a support, legal support. But then this system has been around for 4 decades right now and has been really from day one, from what they called the Cultural Revolution, by closing all the universities for 2 years until they completely changed the staff to those who would spread their propaganda. They changed the education system. There is constant censor. There is no flow of information for decades. Of course, there will be no awareness, no education, and then we will have also a cultural backlash as being LGBTQ, here, if I have cultural backlash, if somebody says something homophobic to me or attacks me, I have a legal system that supports me. In Iran, if I go to a police, I will also be arrested for confessing to my crime. So once I got to a place, I got here, I got my US citizenship, I saw it as a privilege that I earned, that I had gained, and I wanted to extend that privilege and use it to amplify the voices of those people who were left behind. I was one of the lucky ones who got out. That is why I got involved with the activism in LGBT community. And I know we talked about what we can do, like talking to people, trying to change things. Way before October 7 happened, way before all of these chaos that we see in activism scene, I kind of decided to, instead of fighting with the cultural base here, trying to go individual by individual and try to fight, try to force people to hear to what they don't want to listen to, what they don't want to listen, I decided to work with organizations and groups that influence policymakers and policies that affect Iran. One of them, the most strongest one, was Iran Against Nuclear Iran. And even though their main agenda and purpose is to work against the nuclear program of Iran, they really realize the importance of human rights issues in Iran. That's why I exist there. That's why a group of human rights activists work with Irani, is because we understand we cannot just go even in front of policymakers and tell them that for this policy, you cannot allow Iran to have nuclear weapon. It is crucial to go to them and say, you are holding a pride parade in your town. You are, during election, you go out there and introduce yourself as a pro-LGBT rights person, and then you go and negotiate and work with a government that has a prescription for how to execute me, their own citizen. That is, I think, a better way for me to be able to work on a change. And the cultural part of it, that's why most of the cultural content that I create is only in Farsi, because on the other hand, there are queer people in Iran, like when I was, that think it is only them and there's something wrong with them, because that is what you keep being taught from day one, that if you are that, you're a pervert, there's something wrong with you. And I, growing up, did not have anyone who can come there, speak in Farsi, talk about their experience about living in Iran and showing a path forward, a potential path forward. So that is how I am dealing with that. But especially since after October 7, it had been much harder to try to work with non-Iranian, especially activists, and in the queer community. I think something that started from a good place in the hearts of my community. I just want to believe in the most positive thing of that. I don't think it necessarily started from a point of anti-Semitism. I think people saw a war, and people will shown people being killed in Gaza, and they empathize, and they wanted to do something. And that is where there was the opportunity for the Islamist propaganda to infiltrate West. That is when I see these people who wanted to mirror sufferings of certain group of people in Middle East started to repeat the propaganda that I grew up with. And they all thought these are like very new progressive ideas that now the world needs to talk about it. No, I grew up with From the River to the Sea. I grew up with Let's Wipe Israel off the map. I grew up with They Are the Colonialists. I grew up with being Muslim is our identity. This is another thing that people in West don't really differentiate. Judaism, when we are talking about Judaism, correct me if I'm wrong, please, Jewish friends in the room, maybe I should not be the one talking about this, not being a Jew, but Judaism is an ethno-religion. It is not necessarily a belief system. Like, when you just had a good example, you can be a Jewish person and go party on Shabbat, because it is not just a school of religion. However, with Islam, most of the countries and people who identify as Muslims right now have become Muslims after Arab conquest. It is not a part of our heritage. It is not a part of our identity. It is a religion and a school of thought, and that can be criticized. That is not anybody's identity. If that belief system gains political power and decides to use that belief system at a global destruction level, it has to be criticized, and it's not going to be called homophobia. There is this phobia of being homophobic that, Islamophobic. I misspoke. There's this fear of being Islamophobic that doesn't allow people to differentiate that. And the Islamic regime in Iran is really taking advantage of that. And the penetration of them to the West is way deeper than what we think. Working through different organizations, we have located people who are holding key positions in Ivy League that used to be employed by Islamic Republic, that were ambassadors of the Islamic Republic. How come did they end up in Ivy League teaching Middle Eastern security and policy studies? And then we are worried, then we are surprised that we see the young people in West are confused and they cannot differentiate between them. And then we try to go talk to those young people. We will not get any results out of that until we find the root of the problem. So that is what makes it difficult. We talked about pinkwashing, for example. People are very quick, like when Queers for Palestine, for example, speak. My question, and it is a genuine question, let's say Israel does not exist. There are no Jewish people on earth. From the river to the sea is Palestine with their current quote unquote government. Do you think there will be any queer people safe on those lands? Where are queer for Palestine people there? Are they willing to talk about that? Are they willing to differentiate between a terrorist organization, between Hezbollah and Hamas, and resistance groups? If we cannot differentiate those things, I don't think there is even a basis for a conversation. And that differentiation has disappeared, especially after October 7. And unfortunately, I think it was a somewhat successful propaganda war from the Islamic side. I mean, we gotta admit where there is a problem. We cannot just close our eyes. Yes, there is also a lot of support, and there's a lot of silence that sees that something is not making sense by the left, but are too afraid to speak because of the backlash. I have been receiving that backlash. I have been receiving backlash for having an Israeli partner, for God's sake. I mean, and people were like accusing me of being a baby killer, the same, I have heard that term too, because I had an Israeli partner. I'm like, he was my partner before October 7. When my partner passed away last year, I received messages saying, oh, we are happy that there is one less Zionist on earth. So when there is you see these kind of things that it's not coming from a good place of heart. It doesn't come from being worried about people dying in Gaza. People died in Iraq and Afghanistan during wars that US were involved, because a lot of American activists say we are so involved in this because it's our bombs that are falling there. Where were we when there were other people being killed in those wars in the Middle East? The only difference between those wars and this war is that this war, on the other side of it, we have a Jewish country. That is where I think anti-Semitism comes in. And then I see a lot of things in my community, in the left, that I cannot digest. I see a lot of things that contradict with our values. For example, we always had it established that it is transphobic to tell a trans woman how much of a woman she should be for society to accept them as the good trans. Amira can confirm if I'm mistaken. That was completely unacceptable, to tell a trans woman that, okay, I'm not going to have any problem with you being trans if you are the kind of trans that I say. But I have heard it multiple times here in New York. Oh, I'm not anti-Semitic. I don't have any problem with good Jews. I just can't stand Zionism. And we had established that, like, for example, for homophobia, when I, as a queer person, say such and such action is homophobic and you should stop it, it should be considered homophobic. But when the Jewish community comes and says anti-Zionism is a form of anti-Semitism, we are very quick to dismiss that and be like, no, those were the bad Jews. We only like the good Jews. Hitler said the same thing, and we saw where it came. So these contradictions, I still cannot digest. That's why I kind of had to distance myself from the community to try to work in the fields that can actually target the root of the problem a little bit more. But I'm so glad to see that there are strong people that still hold the other side of the fort and do this day-to-day fight. I think I'm getting older and losing my touch a little bit.
No, you're doing really incredible work, and it is important to have people on both sides. It's important to have the voices that are trying to influence the masses, but it's also important to have the voices that are trying to influence the laws that control the masses. And it's really incredible and so important what you're doing. And I really hope that you get the recognition that you deserve from the community that you're helping to save. And as you were talking about, the fact that people are kind of like supporting these, like you said, like the Queers for Palestine, they're supporting something that is against them. And kind of a testament to that is the fact that one of the hostages, Emily Damari, while she was a hostage, her family had to hide the fact that she had a girlfriend, that she had a partner, that she is queer. because of the fact that they were worried that it was more likely that she was going to be attacked or killed while in captivity because of that reason. And when that came out, I still don't see that it changed anything in people's minds. And that's something I always try to explain to people, you know, for people who grew up there, like let's say for my own cousins that grew up in Iran and moved to the United States at the age of 8 and 10, they were taught to chant death to America, death to Israel, not just death to Israel. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people, whether it's Americans or Europeans or people in the queer community, I think a lot of them won't realize that what they're standing for goes against them until maybe it's too late. But I really do hope with amazing voices like all of yours that maybe we can save them from themselves in a sense.
Thank you. I want to just add one quick point to the last thing that you said, that they don't understand that this is working against them and everything. It is, I think it is because they don't understand how a regime, a system like what is in Iran, what is the difference of that kind of a system and a system that is set up in US or in Israel. I personally, I am one of the biggest criticizers of US government. I have a lot of criticism for Israeli government. I don't think any government is sacred. I don't think any politician or policymaker is sacred and off criticism. There are a lot of systematic problems in US that need to be fixed. But without understanding what those problems are and what is the system to change them, we cannot really do anything. When we criticize Iranian government, we're talking about a dictatorship that does not have any room for improvement or reform. The only way to improve things is to completely remove that system and have a democratic system. When we talk about US and solving problems, it is a system. The system is designed in a way that there might be corrupt people in it, but you can remove the corrupt people or corrupt policies and replace them. You don't have to go against the whole thing. But people in the West, like in US, that have problems with certain things in the US system, they think that they have to just like be completely against the whole thing. Like we do hear from people in America, oh, that I hate America. Yes, they are right to say that to America because we did this. Yes, but that doesn't give you the right to wish death upon an entire country. You can criticize their government. Or they, for example, talk about pinkwashing in Israel with the queer rights. How did queer rights came about in Israel? Did it just fall out of the sky one day and just everybody just woke up and became gay friendly? Or from day one that Israel was established, they were like, oh yes, here, set the rainbows first, then let's build a country. Queer community in Israel has fought for these rights, has gained these rights, and is still fighting for these rights. Just for the marriage thing, going from completely not recognized, getting to a place that marriage between two same-sex are recognized, but still their queer community in Israel is working on being able to get married with your same-sex in Israel. So there is a work in progress. We are just seeing a part of that progress that is a testament of, oh, okay, there is a system in place that can be modified, that has the potential to be modified and be better, the same way that we had it in US. The fight started in 1970s. In 2015, we gained the same-sex marriage rights. So it is still going, but there is a system. But with a system inside Iran, there is no way in Islamic Republic we can do enough reforms and activism to gain rights. We need to differentiate these two situations. Sorry, I talk too much.
No, I can listen to you talk for a very long time. But I love that you made kind of that last point about being a critic of both, you know, the American government, the Israeli government. I think that's something that a lot of people don't seem to understand. And I see a lot of comments like that online, that people think that Israelis support everything their government has done. And if anything, Israelis are the biggest critics of their own government than anyone else out there, than any of the anti-Semites in the world, than any of the haters. And I think that's such an important fact for people to understand, is that they are their own critics. And it's such an important thing to understand that they can be their own critics, as you said, because they can make a change. They can fight for a change. And also, like you said about the pink washing, and the fact that they really fought for these rights, and the fact that like only until recently on government ID cards you have both of your parents' information. Only until recently do they start making ID cards where there's two moms or two dads. This is something that people have fought hard for, and to say that it's just pink washing is kind of erasing all of that torture that they went through, everything that they fought for, all the pain that they had to go through to get to this place. And it's
This is the
similar to
whole
what
point of having
Amira
Pride
said.
Month.
Yeah.
That's the whole point.
And
That's like dismissing the whole thing that is happening this month.
and thank you for bringing it back to Pride Month. I think Amira raised her hand, and then Michael raised his hand. So we'll have Amira speak.
I just want to mention something. It's very sad that I see in some international organization like ILGA that they punish LGBTQ organization in Israel that actually they help to Arabs in Gaza and West Bank, like Aguda, like Israeli Gay Youth, that I connected to them since I was in Turkey 6 years ago, and they became my voice as my Middle Eastern sibling in Hebrew. And it's very sad for me. Inside of LGBTQ community, they punish because they all good and great job they're doing in Israel for both Arabs and Jews. And yeah, just I want to add that the whole things that Omid said brings me this that the objectification of lives sometimes uh, sometimes hurt people uh, really bad. Uh, the Israeli organization that fight for freedom, fight for their rights, they are isolated from LGBTQ community just because of their nationality, and you cannot ignore one other side of your identity. They are both Israeli and they are gay, and the both sides are valuable. Even one side hurts sometimes other side. You know, uh, I hurt in Iran, but I couldn't hate my nationality, and I can't accept because of my government's behavior. I isolate in LGBTQ community, but they do with Israel, and it's very sad.
Thank you, Amira. And Michael, you had something you wanted to say as well?
Yeah, I'll add on very quickly. So Omid mentioned about how queer people in Israel have really fought for the rights that they do have now. And I saw that firsthand, especially in the South. In Beersheba, they have a very small but very mighty queer community over there. They have a beautiful pride house. I took part in their celebration. I did it with A Wider Bridge, which is also another phenomenal Zionist or LGBTQ plus organization. And one thing that stuck with me that I took with me for anyone that has anything to say about Israel with pinkwashing, speaking with one of the heads of the Pride House, they told me that when they see people chanting that Israel pinkwashes, it makes them as Israeli queer people feel invalidated in their struggle and the fight that they've taken on to be able to have the rights that they have, and that it's so disheartening to see that, and it makes them feel like they don't exist. So, at least for me, what I take from that is that if anybody ever has anything to say about that, I say, you are literally going against people within your own community, and how dare you? You should feel shameful for that. We are all a part of this community. We are all queer. And if you are going to invalidate another member of your community simply because of their nationality, who they are, where they come from. That's disgusting. And you have no right to be a part of this community if you're going to shame other people within your community. It's like the same time when people say, "Oh, I'm not anti-LGBTQ. I just don't like trans people." If you're against one of us, you're against all of us. That's how it is. If you're against a queer person in Israel, you're against all queer people, and you have no right to be a part of this community. It's as simple as that.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you truly to all of you for speaking out, for taking the time to be here. And I guess I'll end it with, for anyone who has any negativity towards Israel, towards the queer community in Israel, who calls them pink washers, I invite all of you to come to Israel and to take part in the queer parade here in Israel, because it is the most amazing experience, and I think everyone should experience it. And I think it's very hard to continue hating once you've experienced it. So I invite all of you to come here and see it for yourselves. But really, I want to say thank you to all of you, because you guys are really, each and every one of you are fighting a fight on multiple kind of battlefields. And it can be very overwhelming, and it can be very tiring, to be fighting for one community and then have that community that you're fighting for attack you because you're also fighting for another community, because they're all kind of a part of you and you hold all of them dear to your heart, whether you're Jewish or not. Omid and Amira, you still hold the Jewish community dear to your heart and you still fight for them. And it's not easy work. And I just want to really, bow my hat to you and to say thank you to you guys for doing everything that you do.